guys, and welcome back. Today's video is going to be one of my larger watercolor pieces like I usually like to do for my Saturday videos. And I'm going to jump right in talking about the process a little bit, and then I can talk about the concept and the idea behind it. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's already happening really fast. I decided to cut quite a bit of the inking part of this out just for the sake of time and the fact that there are a lot of very similar textures that I create this piece with, so it can get a little repetitive if you're just watching it. But I did want to show you guys just a little bit of a clip of what it looks like while I was doing it. I'm using a light box to take it from my sketch onto the final paper, and this paper is actually super thick. It's 300 pounds, so it's a very thick paper. And I was having a little bit of a hard time seeing all the way through and seeing the details because the sketch that I was working off of was actually I was very careful about making sure that it was very detailed. I was precise with this one. And I couldn't see it through the light box. But what I actually ended up doing was I took some pictures of the sketch itself with my phone, and then I used the light box to get the general shape and the placement, and then I looked at the phone to get the details, and that process worked out pretty well actually. So I'll have to use that for as I finish up this paper since it's so thick. And I am using Micron pens on hot press paper. So the Micron pens work great for hot press because the hot press is so smooth. I'm able to get that crispness in there that is a lot harder to get when I'm using cold press because it's so textured. I have to work a lot more for it. So I find that when I'm doing the Micron line work for watercolors, hot press is definitely my preferred paper type of choice. And that is where I did really quick color studies. I actually decided not to do a bigger one for this one because I knew it was going to actually be a very simple palette. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on in different shapes. So I felt pretty confident moving on from this size of a thumbnail on to the final one. And I felt very strongly about the one on the right. And I was actually really excited about this one because when I first started, I knew that I wanted it to be cool toned and to feel kind of like she's underwater, but without it being literal water or literally drawing in bubbles or anything like that. I just wanted it to have that feeling almost like she's floating in water. But as I was doing this color palette, I did just the flat colors first, and then I looked back at it and I decided I wanted to do a graded wash of this turquoise color from the bottom up that went on top of her and over the background and faded into a clear and as it went up. And that was like the perfect detail that I fell in love with it. I love the look of it because it did give it more of a look like she was in water. Like the down she was, the more water you're looking through, so the deeper the color of the water, the blue color. And it just gave it a lot of depth instantly, and I was really excited about doing graded washes because they are super fun. They're one of my favorite things. So once I saw that and I knew that that was a detail that I wanted to build this piece up on, it was really very helpful, and I knew that that was the direction I wanted to take. I also chose to do, since I did all of these little color palettes with dark hair, usually I do a lot of different color palettes, but I knew that I wanted her hair to be dark because I did such thick line work. So the reason for that is that if I had done a dark background with, say, light hair so that they would contrast from each other, the light hair would be this very small area within a thick line work, and the line work would be camouflaged by the background, so it would disappear a little bit and you would lose a lot of the volume of her hair. So by doing her hair a dark color so that it matched with the line work itself a little bit more, I was able to do the background behind that as a more light color so that those elements, the color of her hair as well as the line work, were able to be more cohesive together and stand out from the background. So those are all just stuff like that is what I'm thinking through when I'm thinking what colors and what values do I want to choose and where to place them, is simply the contrast. How do I make sure that areas that I want to stand out stand out? And conversely, with this piece on the bottom, I wanted some areas to fade in with each other. Since I wanted that to be farther into the water, there would be more haze and more atmospheric perspective that was happening. So I did want some areas to not have contrast between, say, where this fabric is and where her skin was. So some areas I deliberately made sure that the values were very similar. And I did end up basing a lot of my thought process on how I wanted to paint this piece on graded washes. And a little bit about graded washes is it's actually where you take one color and then you blend it smoothly, seamlessly into another color, like a gradient. So here in this particular piece, I actually end up taking a color and then blend it out into no color, into just water, but you can take one color and blend it smoothly into another color. And I highly recommend, if you do watercolor, sit down and practice graded washes and incorporate into your pieces, because it adds so much depth to a piece. It's really fun to do, and there's a lot of really interesting things that you can do with graded washes. I love them, basically, but how I did this one, or how I did a lot of these ones for the overall shading, where I wanted to have the thickness of the ocean towards the bottom and it fade up towards the top where the light would be coming from. What I did was I mixed lots of this turquoise color, and I would take a big fat brush, the fattest one that I had, and I would put one nice solid stroke along the bottom. And since I was moving from bottom to top, I held it upside down and I held it at a slight angle so that gravity was just working a little bit to bring that water down. Not enough that it's going to drip down your piece, but just enough that it's working with what you have. But I'll do that first stroke that's just the color, and then I will take my brush and I will dip it in the water, and then I will take that again and do another stroke right below it so that it overlaps actually. And then those two colors will blend as long as I'm using plenty of water and lots of paint. It will blend and they will create a seamless line between them, or it'll get rid of the line, I should say. And then after that slightly more watered stroke, I will take the brush again and dip it in the water some more. Just dip it once. I don't rinse it out. I just dip it once into the water, and then I do another stroke, and then I just keep repeating that. You just dip it in the water and then go and then go. And then eventually it's just water. And you do want to make sure that you're working with clear water, that you clean out the water that you have been using if you have been, so that it is as pure as possible. But yeah, I did a lot of these graded washes in this piece. I layered it over and over again to get the depth that I wanted, because I didn't want to go in too dark too fast, and I wanted to be able to control how it affected her colors. But I think that I did end up doing maybe 3 or 4 of these graded washes to give it depth down below. And I knew that I wanted her to have a very lifeless look to her. And the way that I made sure that I would do that is through her skin color. So I went in with mostly leaving it white quite a bit, and then I went in with very, very cool shadows. I actually took a lot of the turquoise and the blues that I had for the water and just lightened them up. And that's a great way to get cohesion when you're doing traditional pieces like this, is reuse colors in different areas in your piece and it will immediately harmonize it. But I did want her to be very cool toned with very, very, very little warmth. But I did still want her to have just a little bit to contrast the coldness that is around her and the different shapes. So I went in with this purple color. So it was not a red like I normally do for where I do blush or where I do the ends of their fingers where there's a little bit extra blood there. I did go in with more of a magenta type color, and that helped it pull to the cool side, so it was still referencing all of the shadows and all that coolness, and it wasn't warming her up in any way, but it still gave it a little bit, just a little bit of a hint of life to her. And I do like focusing that kind of a color. Really, no matter what kind of color palette I use, I tend to go in with a warmer version around where there's going to be extra blood close to the skin, to the surface of the skin, that is. So where you have blush at the end of the nose, I like to do it on the fingertips and the elbows. And the elbows in particular, I really like doing in this piece because it's overlapping her stomach, where it's also her skin. So there's a lot of the same tones, because I could go in with her elbows and give those just a little bit of that purple color. It made them pop forward and they weren't meshing together with the shape behind it anymore. It gave the silhouette of the elbows that strength that it needed again. And as I was working on this, I was aware that it did feel very unbalanced. And balance is definitely something that you want to look for in your compositions to make sure that it does feel comfortable to look at and that it keeps the eye moving in a way that you want it to. So because I had all the contrast up at the top, where I have her very dark hair compared to her very light skin and the lighter background, it immediately caught the eye and brought it there, but there wasn't enough weight at the bottom of the piece to balance it out. So it felt very top heavy, and it was not what I wanted. It was feeling just not there, and I wasn't really completely sure how to solve it yet. And I knew that I wanted to do kind of like that graded wash with the cloth. So I started with it darker at the bottom and then faded that towards the lighter as well, so that I was hoping the darkness of that cloth would ground out the bottom of the piece, which it did help. And then I ended up doing a graded wash over the entire piece that was darker and deeper than I had previously to give weight to the bottom again. But it still felt unbalanced. It still felt incomplete. And eventually I realized that it was in need of having a little bit more of that cloth wrapping around on the left side, the bottom of the left side. And I actually ended up adding that in. And as soon as I did, it really finished the composition off. It felt a lot more complete, and the weight distribution of the piece fit, and it kept the eye moving from the bottom, and then it would follow her form and then follow that extra cloth back up. So that fixed the problem, and I was really happy with the fact that I was able to add that pretty seamlessly, because I had done gradients, or I had done the washes over the cloth on the other side. Because it was underneath and I just added color on top of that, it still had a very similar look. It's pretty much indistinguishable from the rest of the cloth that I had painted originally. And I've just got to say, I feel so happy with the process of this piece. I know that I'm a little bit of a broken record where I repeat myself, but a lot of my pieces that I've been doing for the last long time, I've felt very unsatisfied with, because I'm not pushing myself and it's not the direction I want to go in. So a lot of them I'm kind of being a little bit lazy, and I'm not pushing myself, and I'm not taking the time to make sure that it's the way that I want it to be. And there's been a handful of pieces in recent history that I felt like gave me that spark of passion and excitement. And this is one of those. I spent a lot more time making sure that I was really getting the sketch the way that I wanted it to. I was really thinking through each step to make sure that I got the best design, not just the first one that I thought of. So overall, I just felt so excited to work on her, and that makes me feel really good about the future pieces and about my direction. But I will go ahead and say that that's pretty much it for today. I will have the original available at my shop, and I'll have a link in the end card that is about to happen, as well as down in my description. So if you wanted to own an original by me, she will be available. And I will actually have prints available right now, so if you wanted to own her in print form, there will also be a listing for her as well, so you can check that out in the shop link as well. But yeah, I feel like I've accomplished something with her, so that always feels good. But again, that is it for today. I will see you guys at my next video. I post Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. See you then.